The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm quite well. How are you?
Doing pretty well. I have my coffee. I see you have your coffee.
Gotta have the coffee.
We're going to need it too. We've got a lot of content to go through today.
How many letters do we have today?
Nine documents, I would say. Not all of them letters, but definitely all correspondences, which is the biggest we've ever had. Now, some of these are little handwritten postcards that are going to show the passage of time and what's going on. Some are full letters. I'd say full letters. We have at least 4 of those in this episode. So we have at least like 5 other pieces of information that I deemed was important as we start this, the beginning of 1946. We're post-World War II. We're heading into the winter of 46, January, February, and March today. And Jamie, this is the season premiere of season 2 of the Love Sweetie podcast.
Welcome to the season 2 premiere of the Love Sweetie podcast. I love it.
It's really cool. Now, I am going to keep it just for people that like to stay organized and keep track of where they are with their episodes. I'm still numbering the episodes as we go. So this is season 2, episode 1, but it's also episode 44. And on the website, you're going to be able to see that on the podcast page. So the podcast page is switching to be able to show season 2. There's going to be a link to get back to the episodes for season 1. So if you need to catch up on anything, and if you're a new listener, well, welcome to the Love Sweetie podcast. Thank you to all of our returning listeners. And I guess before we get into these 9 pieces of documents, we should talk about just the things we always talk about, which is if you're watching us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Please click that notification button so that you find out when new episodes are available. If you're our Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other audio-only channel listeners, we appreciate very much you listening in on those channels. If you could leave us a review, we very much appreciate that. And as always, especially with moving into a new area, there's going to be things in the photo galleries, the photo albums. Go to www.lovesweetiepodcast.com to be able to enjoy all of the bonus content. And also, if you're new, to review back some of the information on the timeline, if you just want to skip ahead and start with us here fresh in season 2. But there's a lot to get through in this episode. And Jamie, I think we're just going to start the first letter, which comes in from January 46.
January 22nd, 1946, Hope, Kansas. Dearest Kay, gee, I'm sorry I haven't written sooner, but maybe when I tell you why, maybe you'll understand. Just before Christmas, I took sick. I was in bed here at home for a week, and I couldn't eat a bit. When I got better, they took me out to the folks, and I stayed there until his last week. I'm better, so I guess we'll all make it. Just when we think we're going to get started, then all that happens and puts us back further than ever. Oh, me. Louis must be quite a boy, weighs almost as much as Jay. My little nephew is 4 months old and weighs 12 pounds, but I haven't seen him either. Paul has a brother teaching in North High School in Des Moines and also going to Drake University. They just found a house the week before Christmas, so his family is there with him now. Paul is at home this week for lunch, so that gives me a little time to do a few things. One of the teachers has to stay at school over noon hour, and this is his week. And I have to pack his lunch. Some fun. Excuse me, our little neighbor boy just brought us, or Jay, a plate of freshly baked cookies, and I had to answer the door. People are really nice to us here. Well, kiddo, I can't think of any more, so I guess I'd better close for this time. Write again, and I'll be sure to be more prompt at answering. Love to all, Flo.
So that's lovely. So for our listeners,
Yeah.
Allison.
Yeah. This
Can
is
you
new.
just tell us who that was?
So this is a letter. We'll talk about the narrator too here in a moment, but this is a letter from Florence, actually. It's one of the rare Florence letters in the collection. And I find it very interesting that we start 1946 with a letter from Florence to Sweetie, and she's writing from Kansas. And it sounds like their relationship has really grown a lot. Now, Sweetie had stayed with Bob and Florence in New York for about a month.
That's right.
On the East Coast. So I think their relationship having built up a bit of the time there's probably some more correspondences that did exist at one point between Florence and Sweetie. And they're having a somewhat shared experience here. Now, earlier, Florence has already had a child, and that was the little baby that was there in New York. Now, Sweetie's had her son, Louis. And that's what Florence, of course, makes reference to in the letter. She says, I haven't met my nephew yet, just 4 months ago. And Louis was born in September of 45. So she's looking forward, clearly, to meeting up with Sweetie, to being able to see her new nephew. But we get these little updates, places where people are now at the New Year, since we've had a gap in letters a little bit since the end of 45. The narrator is actually a friend of mine. Her name's Jeanne Dillon. And Jeanne volunteered to provide the voice for Florence. This is not the only one of Florence's letters that we have in the collection. They're a bit spaced out, but at least for now, we thought it would be really interesting to bring in a new voice, or to give voice to Florence there. But we kick off the year with Florence, indicating that she is now in Kansas, and that's going to come back and be important in future parts of the story. But now we're going to fast forward. Now, in early 1946, we have some gaps in letters. I will say this. Sweetie right now is in Lacona. She's at home in Iowa. She wants to be in Iowa. The thing is, Lou's not with her right now.
Sunday afternoon, 4:00 p.m. Dearest Mama, after just talking to you, I feel a lot better to know that you miss me as much as I miss you and need me as I need you. I hope and pray you'll come even if I don't have a place by then. As I said, it is tough to find a place and prices are so high it would hardly pay to buy right now. I'll have to go out tomorrow and look for a job. Then I won't be able to put so much time in looking for an apartment. Honey, I'd rather have you here, near me, and even if we can't have the privacy we want, please say you'll come, honey. I do need you, and I think we've spent enough time apart. We could be happy here, I know, and it won't be for so awfully long. Think it over, hon, and let me know as soon as you think you might leave. Do help me. I'll be at the airport 2 hours early. There's a factory up in Collingsdale that is making cameras and instruments. I'm going to go up there tomorrow and put in an application. If I can't find anything to do around here, I'm going to ask Joe Osterhelt for some work. I don't care what he says, I need the work. The job at Sun Oil sounds pretty good, and I think there will be a lot of room for advancement if I'm willing to put my mind down to it. That, of course, would depend on whether I like it or not. Personally, I think I would. I've come to the conclusion that a steady job at $40 a week is better than an uncertain job at $50 a week. With an outlook for steady work for years to come, we could make better plans on buying a house and furniture on time. How do you feel about it? I love you, honey, and need you. Please come, honey, and see if we can't find a place together. Take good care of yourself. Tell Louis I love him and miss him. Give him a kiss for me, and take good care of him. I love you, Mama. I'll always love you, no matter how far apart we are. But, honey, I need you. My wife here with me. Until we're together, love me, honey. Miss me, and please, honey, hurry and come as soon as you can. I'll always adore you. Daddy Louis.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Louis, I know, right? So she wants to be in Iowa. Louis does not want to be in Iowa.
No, he doesn't.
And so that means that they're not going to be in Iowa. That's kind of just where it is. And so I kind of feel bad because it's really funny. I actually just had a recent conversation talking about like kids leaving for school and going to school and then dating somebody and then staying there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like, and he was like, I'm going home. I'm going back to Pennsylvania.
Yeah. The other thing here is really opportunity for work. Now, Lou never graduated high school. This is something that came up in the letters. Chester was actually looking for jobs for him and interviewing employers. Chester was interviewing the employers.
Well, when I heard this, that he was like a camera factory, I'd be like, Chester would be all over that.
Like, go get that job. Go get that job I want free camera parts and discussion.
Give me their number. I'm going to call and interview them.
So, it's really interesting. But we do know this one big thing, which is there's more opportunity for Lou to find a job near Philadelphia than there is in Lacona, which today still has a population of like 300 people. There's many, many more jobs around southeast Pennsylvania. Now, there's also jobs, of course, closer to Des Moines, which would make Sweetie very happy if she was able to stay in Des Moines with Jeanne. That sounds like a great time. The problem right now with what's going on in the time period is there's actually a ton of labor strikes happening. And one of the things was inflation in 1945 was at like 8%. In 1946, it gets to 14% as the market's adjusting to what's happening in the post-war time period. So one of the biggest stories at like the beginning of the year, as I was looking through like the papers of the time from January 46, like every day, is there's some international affairs, things going on post-war. And then when it's not that, or it's not something very local that's happened, like something going through court or something like that, it's strikes. Everything that's going on is strikes. And they're so big. I actually can tell you right at the beginning, 3 in January. And these are not the only ones. There was like a glass workers strike that's not even mentioned here, but these 3 are noted. 174,000 electric workers in January, 93,000 meat packers. So we remember in Ottumwa, there's the meat company, right? So I'd have to see if that one was actually involved with it. And then in January also, 750,000 steel workers go on strike. So there's all of like these strikes from all of these, we'd say like very heavy manufacturing jobs, production driven jobs, all happening at the same time because guys are coming back from the front and they're trying to balance out the economy post-war. And the other thing is it creates a shortage of housing. So you'll notice in the letter, Lou mentions 2 things. One, he's looking for a place to stay and he's looking for a job. The place to stay is a big thing because he's staying with his mom. He's staying with Sydney.
And she had just lost her husband not that long ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
In October 45, Samuel Graham, Lou's father, passes away. So it's a big house at Collingdale. And at the top of the letter, he marks it as Darby, Pennsylvania. Collingdale, Darby, about the same thing. 936 Springfield Road. He's there. This is a big house. The problem is, I don't think he wants to really have Sweetie and the baby there. And I think he knows that Sweetie needs some space from his mother, from Sydney, especially with what she's going through. So she's going through this, and it's that in-laws situation, and he's trying to make Sweetie happy. Staying with Sydney is not going to be the ticket to doing that. So he's looking for an apartment, but he can't find it. Why? All these troops just came home. Everybody's doing the same thing. So housing's going to be a real struggle. I love Andrew's performance here.
Oh, Andrew, you did so good.
Great job, Andrew, I think that's my favorite one of his voice acting here, is expressing the pleading nature of Lou saying, please come home. And you know that Sweetie's digging in her heels in Iowa. Like, no, I don't want to go. I want to stay in Iowa. We should stay in Iowa. And he's like, come on. We need to get to Pennsylvania. But she's still holding out at this point. So she's been home now since May of 1945. He clearly left at some point between, I would say, October. We saw pictures from October 45 and now February, and she's not with him. So now it's just a matter of when is she going to finally have to join him in Pennsylvania. Let's see if we can answer that question by the end of today's episode. But with that being said, we're going to head into 3 items in quick succession here. Now, these are all handwritten postcards. 2 are from March 4th, and what it is, it's basically like an index card you send in the mail. Blank. One side is, you're sending information, and the other side is your note. That's it. It has the postmark on it. No artwork. No nothing. That's it. Just handwritten postcards. You can fit about a paragraph or 2. If you write really tiny, you might fit 3 paragraphs on one of these. But Sweetie's only writing 1 paragraph each. So we're going to go through these 3 documents, starting on March 4th.
March 4th, 1946. Dear Jeanne, thought of you today while listening to Sammy K and O'Mavis family, so that I'd better drop a line. Louis still carries a little temp, 100 degrees, which isn't too bad, but he's got those put your loving arms around me blues, which means I get absolutely nothing done, and the sad part is that there's so much to do. We weighed Louis and find he weighs 18 pounds 6 ounces, which makes him quite a hefty boy to tote around. But I guess that's my lot as a mother. Haven't lost any weight, and it discourages me no end. Woe is me, Sweetie.
Yeah, so that's the first one.
Yeah, so she's got little Louis.
She does, yeah. And this is a good reminder for our listeners as we go into the letters moving forward, which is she's always going to refer to her husband as Lou and her son as Louis. So you can always differentiate who she's talking about. But here's the next one.
March 4th, 1946. Dear Jean Thin, we arrived home safely at 5:30, set up the bed immediately, and sorta read up the print a little. We've had supper, and now Mom and Daddy have gone to make a couple calls. Louis is playing, and so I decided I'd better drop you a line. How do you like that? And to Lou, too. I haven't had my exercise yet, so I'll have to run to the post office. Yes, run. I'm so terribly fat. No hope, I guess. I'll try to keep you posted. Love, Sweetie, and Louis.
That's kind of it. That's kind of cute.
Yeah.
I feel bad because she's worried so much about it. But when I read this actually has a phrase in it that I've heard, that I heard when I moved out to Pennsylvania, read up.
I'm unfamiliar with the phrase read up.
It means to like tidy up just a little bit, read up the room. It means to go around and kind of make it. And it's funny, it's because my husband's mother said it. She goes, just read up the house a little bit. And I was like, sure. I had no idea. But yeah, so it's a little turn of phrase. It just means to tidy up a little bit. And I was talking with Allison about this beforehand. This is, I thought this was very interesting. This kind of brought the boomer generation out. We are looking at this time period, 1946. And Louis is one of the first boomers.
Yep.
One of those first in that generation. Yep. So I thought this is kind of fun because, she's a boomer too. And they kind of have those little phrases, and it came out. This is really cool to kind of see the culture that the boomer generation was formed in.
And what they had as kids, especially as they grew up. And this is going to get so detailed. So if there are people listening to the podcast, they're like, I'm really curious to see both on the medical side, the pediatrics of the time, in addition to how the kids acted back then. Oh, you're going to get a lot of that. You're definitely going to get to see what life was like living at the home with the children. So, yeah. But, it's a fun update. She writes these two, and then, of course, she's self-conscious. She's so self-conscious of herself. This is going to be all the time in all the letters.
March 5th, 1946. Dear Jean, we'd meant to come to Des Moines to have some of Mom's teeth pulled, but had weather, and a flat tire put the kibosh on that. So we tied my pink and blue comforter. I've yet to do the edges and hope to do that yet tonight. I've heard from Lou each day, but so far he's found no apartment, and nobody is hiring on account of the strikes now. So we wait. We will be up, probably the first good day, so don't be surprised to see us. We hope to get Mom's teeth pulled before I go. I'm still up a tree about what I'm going to do. I can't lose weight, and my morale is slipping fast. Sweetie.
She now they mentioned the strikes, so that's one of the things. So she's concerned that if she does go out to Pennsylvania, he's still not working. So we still get the update here. Still no job, still no apartment. It's now March 5th. His letter was back on February 24th. The next letter we have, and this is another letter from Lou, is from March 8th. And I think we'll notice a little bit of a shift in tone from Lou from the previous letter on February 24th.
Dear Jean, just a few lines, if you can read them, to let you know I'm still alive and kicking. As yet I found nothing in the line of a place to live or a place to work. The latter is my own fault. I guess I have a touch of spring fever, but I'd rather wait till Sweetie gets here and we can take a little vacation together. From the looks of things, I guess and should say, if she gets here. I do miss her, and I'd give anything if I had made her come on when I did. I didn't though, so it's too late to worry about spilled milk. I think of you often, and of the fun and giggles you had, while we were both with you. It was fun, and I want to say thanks again for your generosity and kindness to us both. I hope the enclosed cartoon doesn't offer any offense. I just couldn't resist sending it to you. We've had nice weather since I arrived, as per usual, and you know where, but now we're paying for it by way of some drizzly, miserable weather. It doesn't usually last long, though, about 3 days, then I can go out and get busy in the yard again. I hope you're well and working. Drop me a line if you get a chance. Say hello to Monas for me if you see him, and tell him Broad Street say hello too. Hoping to hear from you, Popeye Graham.
Yeah, and him
That's
being the
cute.
sailor, signing as Popeye
I like that.
is good. But yeah, here's the thing. He's sensing like she's really digging in Iowa. Like the longer she stays out there, the harder it's going to be to get her to come over. So he's like, oh, man, I really do wish that I'd made her come with me when I got out here, because it's becoming increasingly difficult to convince her to come join me in Pennsylvania. And speaking of Pennsylvania, I do have our page open. I have the Love Sweetie podcast open here because I think it's important people can see an image of the house at Collingdale. I think we brought this up once before, but it's a good time to do it just so people can get a visual. And this is a picture that's on the Love Sweetie podcast website. So that's exactly what I'm going to go to navigate through there so people can see. When you get to the Love Sweetie podcast website, just click on Sweetie's scrapbook and then click onto the photos section. And in this case, you want to go to the Graham family from the 1940s and earlier. Click here to view that album. And the new photo that's been added here, and you can see the gallery of the Grahams. Here's Sydney. This is Lou's mother, so the very stern look she seems to have at all times. The last photo here is of 936 Springfield Road. And this house is no longer here. This is now an intersection. There's nothing there. It's a busy intersection of a road. This house was torn down. But this is 936 long before that in Collingdale. And in the front there, we have actually Sydney standing in front. And next to her is Marguerite. That's actually Joe's wife. So this picture, we believe, is from the mid to late 1940s. And you can see that big porch. But you can tell this is a big property. Now, Joe's probably not at home because we don't get any mention that he is. And he's an actor, so he travels around a lot. Elizabeth is most likely at home, which is, her nickname's Dit. That's Lou's sister. This is a pretty big house. You could easily fit a lot of people in this house to stay. And there's going to be some more space out there because, well, Samuel's not around anymore. And Sammy Jr., Lou's other brother, had passed away in, I think, 1935. So right now it's probably, at the time this letter is written, that it's just Sydney and Elizabeth and Lou staying in the house. So it could definitely fit Sweetie and Louis. But he's still looking for an apartment.
It doesn't matter, though, how big the house is. It's a shared space. It's something that, and it isn't hers. It's not hers. Yeah. And I think we do have to appreciate that Lou didn't make her come, because he could have easily said, get on a plane and come. Yeah. Or get on a train, come. Like he could have been, but he was like, he wanted her to come of her own volition. Yeah. He didn't want to force her. And so this is troubling for her, and it's troubling for him too, because I'm curious as to why he didn't just go back to Iowa. I mean, that's where Jeanne is. He could have probably found something in Des Moines. Yeah. I mean, it's a gamble, basically. Des Moines is still significantly smaller than Philadelphia area and all the suburbs. So it all just comes down to, in that post-war time, with all the labor strikes going out, and a lot of those labor strikes are in production. There's a lot of manufacturing all over the place, but especially in the Midwest. The odds of getting the job probably in Des Moines were probably sensed as being lower than what he could do. Now, he does mention in the previous letter, he actually mentioned Sun Oil. Sun Oil is doing a lot of shipping for oil on ships. So there may be, the opportunity he's talking about with Sun Oil is probably having to do with fixing things in relation to ships, which is one of his major skills. He's not going to have that opportunity if he goes out to Iowa, because even though we know they have those naval stations out there, the running joke about where's the ocean out there. In Philadelphia, you have the pier. You have the river coming in, and you've got Jersey nearby in the ocean. So there's going to be some opportunities for working on ships in this immediate vicinity. So I think he's sensing with his particular trade, his odds are better if he's in Pennsylvania, and that's why he's been staying there. But well, he does mention too, and I think that we had talked about this once, he has a touch of the spring fever. So maybe he's not really looking for a job as much as he could be. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and place some of the blame of Sweetie not coming out, because I think if he would have had a job or found a place to stay, she probably would have come out a lot sooner. But so his friends are there, right? I mean, so he can spend a little time swimming. Well, not swimming, but like, hanging out with them, going to the pier. People haven't served. Yeah, there is the story that we've heard that, Lou getting back from the war did what a lot of people did when they got back from the war, which is have these reunions and catch up and have a good old time with everybody.
And yeah, he needs to really find this job and find this apartment and really put his mind to it. But yeah, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to convince her to leave, which that's going to be the challenge through the rest of this episode is at what point is Sweetie going to be like, okay, and have to make that trip. So let's see if we're any closer. Jamie, we have a letter here from Sweetie.
What is this one? Is this number 7 today?
This is number 7 today. And I know it's quick that we've already gotten through this much content. But now we're in mid-March. So this is from March 12th.
Lacona, Iowa, March 12th, 1946. Dear Jeanne, yeah, I says I'll write you a letter, since a letter is better than a card. And so I've written neither. Yep, that's me. Seems that I do well to write to Lou and do the must jobs of the day. I hardly know where to start to bring you up to date, so I guess I'll have to start way back on Thursday. Mom and Dad went to the farm even though we'd had a bad rain. The car went off in the ditch, and though they had chains, they couldn't get it out. On Friday, Daddy and I went out to the Ford with chains on the Chevy in hopes we could pull the Ford out with the Chevy. You guessed it. They both were stuck. I took myself out over the fields to the highway and walked up to the third house high on the hill and got a farmer to bring the tractor. He did pull the Ford out, but he drove off the road to let Daddy drive by and got the tractor stuck. He and his son pushed, and I drove the Chevy, and we got it, Chevy, out. But that sore old tractor sits there yet. Saturday, I worked on the black suit most of the day. I really can't see that it would have been a much bigger job, just to make a new one. Sunday, I finished the suit. When I come to Des Moines, I'm going to send it to be steam pressed. Louis had his second shot for diphtheria and whooping cough. He's had real old-fashioned colic for 2 nights, and with the sore arm and diphtheria shots, he's a little bit hard to manage. I've tied my pink and blue comforter, made a bed for it, and a spare bib. We've tied Mom's green-flowered comforter, and today the old junk flannel one. Mom helped me sort some of my things today, and we repacked the box of loose tools. Tomorrow we're going to look at the dishes and see if they're packed well enough and if they're worth shipping or not. I'd like to send the crystal, chair, coffee table, and end table, but I fear it's out of the question until we have a place. No, he hasn't found a place yet, and in spite of my vow and all I fear, I'll have to go anyway. I was quite surprised to have a letter from Lou's mother yesterday in which she practically said I was a poor wife, that Lou was a nervous wreck, that he had a cold, was miserable, and it was my fault. I wrote back and tried to set her straight on a few of the little items she mentioned. I was decent about it, but she can't help but get my meaning. I'm afraid that it will not run smoothly, but as I said, I owe it to Louis to try to straighten things out with Lou. So, will you be my lackey boy and do my bidding for me? And I'm aware that it is hard for you to do many things, and I have quite a few things that must be done, and I guess you're the sucker this time. Here goes.
Okay, before we get into our list, we got a lot to talk about here.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, you stay out of my marriage.
Yeah. That's why she doesn't want to stay at the in-laws' house that we just looked at, especially, not just space, but...
Well, the fact that she would, the audacity to like, I mean, I'm sure that Lou's like pouting and she's probably tired of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my wife isn't here. But I'm sorry. But like, stay out of my marriage.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of, like, I can't even, I could never imagine, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of relationship she thinks she has with Sweetie.
Yeah.
But it ain't that. And maybe that's the reason why she doesn't want to come out.
Yeah, it could be. I think it's very much part of it. I think she senses.
I think that is the reason
about Sydney. She's met Sydney before, and she's mentioned, how Sydney sort of gets all stressed when Marguerite visits. We know that, with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you can also see kind of maybe where some of Elizabeth's attitude, which has already come through a little bit in the letters, is coming from. But she calls her a poor wife. Now, their history, the history of Sweetie and Sydney is going to be something to really watch carefully as we head through all of the letters. I mean, this is a very interesting, rocky road at points, and we're at one of the rockiest points, it would seem, right now, which is Sydney's a very traditional wife. very traditional type of person. I mean, she wears pearls in the middle of the day in the afternoon, right? We've seen that picture if you go in those galleries where she's just casually wearing her pearls. She's going to be very stern about a lot of things. And the thought of this much time has passed and she's just in Iowa is unfathomable for Sydney, which is where she's coming from. But yeah, Sweetie's having none of it. Like, no, I don't need to listen to you. Now, prior to this in the letter, I think one of the other great parts of this, so we don't miss this story about the carving stuck in the road. The Chevy, they tried to get the Ford to get the Chevy out.
That is so funny.
And then the Ford gets stuck, and then they get this tractor, and then the tractor tries to help, and the tractor gets stuck. And then the Chevy, which was the original thing that's stuck, is the thing that's freed, and the tractor's still on the side of the road. So poor farmer.
And at the time of this letter, it seems like it's still there.
Yeah, I think the tractor.
Like he's like, we're gonna need a bigger tractor.
Yeah, I don't know how to get this out of here. So yeah, not great weather going on out there.
You know, and I appreciate probably that they had to get and take care of animals and whatnot.
Oh
but
yeah,
they like went to the farm even though there was a bad rain.
Yeah,
like maybe it was probably a good idea for you not to go
or
walk or something. I don't know,
yeah.
but yeah, when I was like, oh, of course they went to the farm. Of course they got stuck.
Yeah,
but I thought that was funny. Yeah, so I definitely wanted to stop here, and it does seem like she's getting ready.
Yeah.
Do you think that the letter from Sydney kind of pushed her?
I don't know if it would have helped. I think. Is she internalizing a guilt trip here? I don't think she felt guilty at all from Sydney's letter. If anything, it probably made her want to dig her heels in even more, just to prove a point. She's the type, because she's a little spitfire like that. But
I don't know. I don't think that she convinced her. I think she was like, you know what? Fine, I will come out there.
Oh, you think it was like that? Could be. Yeah, it could be.
Just remember, you asked for this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna have
so I think it's more like that.
Over our tea. Yeah.
I'm a traditional woman. And honestly, she should have, when Lou got there, she should have just went out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't. This is really funny because it's kind of like the start of my relationship. I was apart a while because I was finishing up a job and he had moved to take another job. But it was always I was going to come right after I finished. It was not a question. Like, and I think that I think she was really trying to just hold out for maybe him to change his mind.
Yeah, like maybe he'll come back to Iowa. Maybe he'll find an opportunity out here. The more time passes on her side, even she can see, yeah, it's not going to happen. You know. Plus, this thing she mentions about the vow, all I fear I have to go anyway. Yeah, like she's saying, I owe it. There's this line. I'm afraid it will not run smoothly, but as I said, I owe it to Lewis to try to straighten things out with Lou. So maybe there was another like vitamin letter in the middle of this that was their relationship was really starting to get damaged by the distance at this point. The war, you have a pretty good excuse when someone's at the front.
Oh yeah.
This you don't have as much of a good excuse. It's time to go. But she's going to make her list here. She's going to get Jeanne to help out with some items because, as you indicated, it does seem like she's starting to get some things in motion to prepare for the trip.
1. Call the airline companies, both of them. I called one, United. Get their schedules again, fare, and earlier flying date. You may have no choice, but if you do, I'd say on March 26th or 27th. A day or two earlier would be better than a day or two later. They may insist that you come down to their city office to pick up the ticket. Be sure to say our 6-month-old baby will be along. 2. Ask Dandy Diaper to have their drive stop at your house on Saturday, March 23rd with final bill so settlement can be made. Guess I could do this myself. 3. I guess you'd have to use your best judgment about the appointment for my hair. I wonder if Betty Wildner could give you the name of a good operator. That is, if you think Yonkers isn't too expensive and my best bet. I think Monday, March 25th would be okay if you don't think I'd be too fuzzy. If you think it would look better to have it done sooner, that will be fine. Do make the plane reservation at once and drop me a line about it as soon as you can. Will you keep me when I get there? Is there anything you want us to bring you here? Drop a line and do tell the supervisor at Mercy that it is possible to stuff hospital chairs. Yak, yak. I sure do miss you, and we do love you. Sweetie and Lewis. I don't intend to tell any of them when I'm coming. I'm just going to go.
I love that.
Yep.
I love her.
Yep.
I honestly do think she's kind of like going out of spite.
Yeah, now it's a little different.
I think that's a small part of it.
Yep.
But yeah, and I do like that she's like, you know what? Fine, you want me there? I'll just show up.
And
then be like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be here. Well, you want me here. Well, yeah. So it is. It feels. That's a little intrusive. It was a little intrusive on Sydney's part. I'm going to just put that out there. But Sweetie should be with her husband.
Yeah, she should. And she's leaving Lacona at this moment. She's had enough of her dad puttering around at the farm, getting tractors and, everything stuck in the roads. And in the interim, before she heads out, she's going to spend a little bit of time with Jeanne in Des Moines, which is why she's mentioning, hey, is there anything you want around the house? I'll bring it up with me. And then I'm going to stay with you for a little bit. And then she's giving some possible dates. And so I'm going to leave them in suspense. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and too, did you see like this little thing she said? What it was about, tell them we'll have our 6-month-old baby with us. When she's talking to, what does it say? Be sure to tell them, say our 6 months. She's like, that's your baby too.
Yeah. And then we have just a couple more actually.
Oh my gosh, we've got 2. This is such a treat.
Yeah, we're moving through the content here pretty well. And this is the other thing, by the way, people listening in season 2, we've given a lot of context of both what's going on at the time due to World War II and due to everybody learning about the family, certainly in season 1. These are all handwritten letters. At some point in 1946, Sweetie's going to get her hands on a typewriter. And she can type really fast. So the letters are going to get longer. And we're not seeing it just yet, but there's going to be a lot more you're going to be hearing narration-wise about the day-to-day from Sweetie, wherever she happens to be at that time when that happens. But yeah, so getting through a lot, but it's I think it's painting the scene and the frustrations of like just the kickoff to 1946 here. But here's her next letter. Now this comes in 9 days after the one from the 12th.
March 21st, 1946. Dear Fathead Aunt Jeanne, here are some of your things, washed, pressed, and mended. We have kept back some of the things that are not yet ready, but we'll try to get to them and get them done in time that we can bring them tomorrow when Mom and I come to do the packing and shipping, pending Daddy's diagnosis of your illness. Should you find a bump or two where bumps ought not to be in a couple of slips, blame them on to me, for I'm the guilty fixer. However, I'd like to remind you that though they may be reasonably new slips, they aged quickly, and the seams had gasped a fond farewell to each other as they parted company. They may hang together, though, for a while. We are indeed sorry that you've been sick and alone all this time, too. Can't say I could have done you much good, but I could at least have felt sorry for you all this time. Be sure to tell the new doctor about all your aches and pains and take the pills right on time as he says. I talked to Mama, and between us, we've decided to let the reservation stand as it is. The Chicago delay would be tiring, but I'd rather do it anyway than to do all the flying at night. Of course, we must wait to hear your trouble before we can come to pack. If necessary, the change could probably be made later on. There's an OB at Liberty Center that has given their first warning call, and it is possible that the folks would have to go there and Mom and I couldn't get there tomorrow as we plan. We'd like to get there and get the things packed and the bed ready and have the express stop at noon to pack it all up. I've been hearing from Lou nearly every day. He has high hopes for getting in at the Navy Yard again at $1.20 per hour for 5 days a week. He gives me the same old song and dance about coming, so I wrote a deliberate lie and said I couldn't be there for a month and a half or 2 months at least. I keep talking up the shots and reaction to ward off suspicion. He had the last diphtheria and whooping cough shot last Monday night. He's doing pretty well now. The folks are bringing Mrs. Sandy up to see Dr. Harnagle. She's very weak and nervous at the prospects of it all, and has said she'll not go if Mama doesn't go to the hospital and stay with her. So Mom probably won't be able to come out today to see you, but we'll try to come tomorrow and see you, gab a while, etc., etc. I'm leaving the folks at the time when Daddy wants me most to stay with the telephone. He's argued I should stay a while. I argue I can't.
So we compromised that I'd make an extra trip to Des Moines to ship the clutter and then come back to the phony hop until Sunday, ever sometime when he'll bring me up there. I hope we can get the baby books, album, scrapbook up to date on Monday while I'm there. Presuming, of course, you'll be pretty well recovered by then. Mama is nursing aching muscles, bones, backs, etc., etc. The roads out to the farm are impassable with a car since the time we got both cars stuck. So she and Daddy have gone on foot from the gravel road twice yet. Walking in the mud is alone a major undertaking, but weigh yourself down with outsized, borrowed boats, a spade, trees, with protectors, and the trip alone is exhausting, but set out 15 to 20 to 30 trees, and they're both so tired that they drag in the mud on the way back. Ah yes, great life. Those farmers, plucky people. Darn fools, though. Claude sends his best wishes and hopes you're feeling better. Ace snorts his agreement, and Mama will anxiously hear Daddy's diagnosis. I'll just sit here and chew my one remaining fingernail and cuss till they get here and tell me to. Sure do hope 'tain't serious, and that you're not feeling too awful terrible. Here's a sure cure. Turn on my soap operas, and when you hear all that those poor people suffer through, all the sickness and divorces, twins and lawsuits, you'll think you're sitting on top of the world. That's some of Lou's Pollyanna ideas that I've borrowed. Putrid, ain't it? Hope to see you tomorrow. Meanwhile, we hope you're much better. Love to our fathead Aunt Jeanne, signed this first day of spring, March 21st, 1946. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
She didn't tell Lou that she was coming.
No. In fact, she says flat out she lied to him. Wow. And it's also, now we hear there's pressure from Chester for her to stay. So that's also playing into this. Now, Chester's like, oh, you should just stay and like cover the phones here at the office. Because, he's not at the office to cover the phones himself. He's out puttering. So
well, and I guess the puttering is treacherous.
Yeah, it's treacherous.
Treacherous puttering.
You have to walk to get to the puttering. So, no, Laura's not doing that much because the cars were stuck and all these other things. Yeah, and then this part. So, we get the idea that she's also kind of saying, well, Lewis is having these reactions to these shots, so I should stay longer and things like that. So the whole timing, it does seem that she's just leading him on thinking she's going to be months and months away, and she is actually really starting to make the plans to go. I love this part about the soap operas.
Yeah.
That she's like, however, whenever you think you have it bad, just look at all these people and these problems in these soap operas. Now, these are the radio soaps. Right?
Yeah.
Not soap operas in the sense that we know them today, like the midday, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, General Hospital kind of soap operas. What's really funny is the one thing I remember my grandmother always being dedicated to doing in the middle of the day during the week is watching soap operas when she was older. So she always was listening or watching other people's fictional problems pretty nonstop. And she would comment on these things. So I always recall her watching those. But in this case, this is the radio soaps. Which is it's really funny, and then what she gives the line, putrid, ain't it? Yeah. Yeah, I've never had a desire to watch soap operas.
Oh, no, I did. Oh, for sure.
You did?
Oh, in college. It was fun. Well, it was really funny because, like, you have your afternoon off. And we were one of the only rooms on the floor that had a TV and had cable.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so we used to watch Bold and Beautiful,
Okay.
Yeah,
no, I watched a ton of USA, and it was always that there was a Law & Order SVU marathon on. There's always, like, it was the same episode. I'm like, I think it's this guy. I think I've seen this before. It's this guy. But it didn't matter. I would just keep watching. I've watched these episodes so many times in college. I guess that really is like the soap, like it's not considered a soap opera, but it's the standard.
Yeah, I understand. But there's like drama and the characters and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fun that there was soap operas on the radio.
Yeah, the radio soaps. So.
Well, so Jean's sick, but they are planning on, and I found this really interesting because she wrote this on the 21st, and then she's like, well, we'll try to see you tomorrow. So she's going to mail it out, and it was going to get to Jeanne that day. Yeah.
I mean, they're only about an hour away by car today. If you're thinking Lacona to Des Moines, Lacona's about an hour south, a drive from Des Moines. So whatever was going on with the mail, they were getting their updates pretty quickly within the day. which is pretty great compared to,
Yeah.
I know sometimes if I mail something out from where I am in Bucks County to Philadelphia, it might not get there for a few days with the Postal Service because there's so much. Now, I think that's a part of like volume and everything else and where things have
like
been
where you are.
prioritized. Yeah, but in this time period, I mean, this is the primary method of communication. So it's a pretty impressive business, the Postal Service in like 1946, for things to be getting to these rural towns, even
Yeah.
from like a place like Des Moines to their capital. It's going to be making its way. And that's why she's also sending those postcards, those handwritten cards. Because, a paragraph, stamp, send. Oh, I can do one later in the day, stamp, send. You know, Jean's going to be receiving those probably on the 5th, like within
That's
the
crazy.
day later.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's just, but that's how they had to like do it, you know. But
Yep.
it's just, I was like, wow. So yeah, she'll get that day, and then you know, she's like, oh, okay, great. Now what? You hold it, and you're like, okay, I could write you back, but you're gonna be here. Like it's just, it's just the time it takes for that kind of stuff to happen. You know, everything took so much more time.
Yeah.
It makes me think too when she, probably when she sat down with Sydney's letter and like started writing and then was angry and then started getting stuff out. She was probably like, okay. And then she kind of settled down a little bit. And then, you know, so it's nice because it gave her a chance to kind of like think about things, but not like a text when you're mad.
Right.
You know what?
It wasn't the instant gut reaction of that. Might be really one of our downfalls in the modern day. We have made the communications almost too fast where we don't sit back and think for a moment before sending the thing. I mean, if you wanted to get like a text out back then through one of these postal cards, you're going to write it down. You're going to walk it to the post office in most cases. And probably by the time you'd walk there, you'd be like, this is a great idea. You know, you'd have that time to process the information. Not today. So,
you know what? Maybe nobody needs to know about that one.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe this wasn't a good idea. I'm just going to have some fresh air, literally. You know, like you're getting out there to go send it out. Yeah. And not all the houses have phones. Now, he has a phone in the office, but that's it. And she's not calling long distance to Lou in Collingdale. No, she's not having any of that. But then we do have one more document. We actually have one of those handwritten cards, and this comes in 5 days later from the letter we just heard.
March 26th, 1946. Chicago. Dear Jeanne, if I have to stay over, I'll call Frank. I had 2 seats from Des Moines to Chicago, so Louis could be down and sleep a while. We had a very fine lunch, and it seemed to improve my butterfly stomach very much. For a while it was very clear, but before we got to Chicago it had gotten cloudy, and there was little to see. I had tried to get an earlier plane, but no soap, and some planes are passing over Philadelphia without being allowed to land. I've just checked again, and the flight is still scheduled at 8:05, but they warned me to stand by for further word. Louis is very cross now. Sweetie.
She's traveling.
That's it.
She's flying.
She's flying.
On one of the airlines, there's 2.
Yeah. And there must be a weather issue in Philadelphia if they're having to land planes elsewhere. But this is the last piece of correspondence we have from March of 1946. And it's important. I wanted to end this episode with this 9th item, which shows us immediately that she's finally en route. So we can see exactly how long it takes her to rejoin her husband. And at this point, she's heading east. She does make it to Collingdale to stay with Sydney, against her probably best wishes that she wasn't having to stay with Sydney, that Lou had found something by then. Lou, of course, no doubt relieved that his wife and his son has finally joined him. And from this point on in the story, and this is why this is so big, is the beginning of season 2. Other than, I would say, almost like some sabbatical moments of her lifetime, this is the beginning of Sweetie's time as a Pennsylvanian. And it's not going to be a comfortable adjustment for Sweetie. But one of the amazing things when we have these sort of like fish out of water stories is the observations she's going to be making about what's happening. And as she writes these gigantic letters to Jeanne and to her family about what it's like in the East compared to the Midwest. And she's going to do this for the entirety of her life. But this is really the starting point. So where season 1 was the Midwestern family and where she's coming from, this is now the story heads into where she's going towards. Her heart is always going to be in Iowa. She's always got her heart with Jeanne in Des Moines. Always has her heart in Des Moines. And Louis was born in Des Moines. So he always has that very big connection. But here they are. They've arrived. 936 Springfield Road. to stay with Sydney, to stay with Dit, in a pretty tense environment, hoping that Lou finds a job, hoping that Lou finds a place to stay. He hasn't found this yet, and that's where we're going to leave Sweetie and the family as she heads to the east and arrives in The Thing Not Noted arrives in Collingdale. So with that, thank you everybody for listening today. We hope you enjoyed the season 2 premiere of the Love Sweetie podcast. It's time. We're now in Pennsylvania. See you next week.